So hello and welcome everybody to another Sacred Wisdom podcast. In this episode we will be discussing another chapter from our book, and this week it will be on the British cryptids. A lot of sightings around UK of very strange creatures, bipedal creatures. Although it's always told about that it's in the USA or other parts of the world, there is a lot that happens in the British Isles. And we're going to discuss that today, and I'm joined with the amazing Stephen Denman, who is my brother, here today. So welcome, Steve.
Hello, Zach.
This is the book we both written, and Stephen has gone into some very in-depth research in this. So please, if you'd like to purchase this, the links are below. But let's move on to the chapter, Steve. So
Absolutely.
The British cryptids. So first of all, tell the viewers what actually is a cryptid.
A British cryptid, or cryptid, doesn't have to be just in the United Kingdom of Great Britain. Cryptids exist just geographically in Western Europe, Eastern Europe. They exist in North America, Latin America, and many other locations across planet Earth. Yeah. But for the sake of argument, in this country, British cryptids can be defined as some type of life form. It could be bird-like or avian or perhaps mammal type, and these are not officially recognised by Western science, certainly wouldn't be recognised by the professors who do research into biology and ecology at Oxford University or Cambridge University, certainly wouldn't be recognised by the Smithsonian Institution of Washington DC, as usual. And of course we see the same pattern emerging, so they're on the periphery of being accepted as existing life forms.
Yeah.
But they do exist. But what it appears to be with cryptids is they literally resonate just beyond the frequencies and vibrations of the space-time around us in the 3D holographic reality we define as the material dimension here on planet Earth.
Yeah.
So, scientists or academics do not look at cryptids and accept they're officially recognized life forms that can be categorized as being sighted and recorded in the various land-based or aquatic ecosystems around the British Isles.
Now, there are, for example, we have the giants of the Albion, which goes back very far, but also you've got the great serpents of the different locks in Scotland. That's but also as well, what I'm really intrigued by is the Owlman, which was connected to the Mothman in the USA. That's as well, very similar. So tell us about the Owlman, Steve. Okay. Tell us more about that.
So on the 17th of April 1976, two sisters, June Melling and Vicky Melling, were actually vacationing with their parents on holiday in the village of Mornan in Cornwall in southwest England. Now, there is a very famous old church there called St. Mornan and St. Stephen's Church.
Right.
And the Owlman was seen by them around the actual church steeple and actually swooped down and then flew off. We know that the same Owlman was actually seen during the actual medieval period across Cornwall, as well as in parts of Devon. And there's very ancient accounts of that. We also know that in Alfriston, in East Sussex, which is a village there, around near the actual Long Man of Wilmington on the South Downs, is seen in the wooded areas near to the village of Alfriston.
To get around ley lines.
Again, there's intersecting geomagnetic ley lines running through these areas, running through the South Downs, probably where the Long Man of Wilmington is carved into the actual hillside there, and obviously through the medieval village of Alfriston itself, where you've got, I think, a hotel called the Star Inn. And I think the geomagnetic ley line is actually running through that area. So then you go down to Cornwall, and again, you've got St. Mornan and St. Stephen's Church, where the actual ley line is running through where the actual church building itself was constructed. So it appears that these British cryptids, whether it's the Owlman, or it's the Surrey Puma, or the Beast of Bodmin Moor, they appear to literally materialise out of nowhere. Almost as if they're literally moving beyond space-time, possibly through the astral plane, and then they suddenly appear in this 3D holographic reality that we call the material dimension for a brief period, but then they simply vanish again and are not seen for either 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, maybe even 5 or 10 years. Then they suddenly reappear, and suddenly, livestock on farms is suddenly killed or found dead, and they're sighted by a number of individuals, and then they disappear again.
What do you think this is? What do you think they are? Because there's not just, besides the owlman, there's the questing beast as well.
Yes.
So these are kind of really strange creatures.
That's right,
They're like
yeah.
crossbreeds between like panthers and
Yeah.
sort of, I don't know, just weird looking creatures.
Yeah, well, the questing beast from the medieval period was seen as a chimeric or hybrid sort of mammalloid type cryptid.
Yes.
So what we know is, and again, it was seen all across southwest England.
But just on the medieval period, just with the dragons and all that kind of as well.
Yeah.
Which
I mean, I personally believe they're bioetheric life forms.
Right.
And they operate outside linear space-time. You know, you see, for example, the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, the same kind of things going on with the geomagnetic ley lines.
Yeah.
Bizarre spacecraft appear and then disappear. People have seen what appears to be werewolves.
Yes.
And reptoids or reptilian humanoids have appeared. And, you know, obviously the actual skinwalkers, which I believe were Navajo Indians, who had the ability to were expert in shape-shifting.
Yeah.
And so there's all these different cryptids that exist beyond space-time. You know, obviously the laws of physics state that this cannot be the case. Because again, Western science is being deliberately shaped to help to shape human consciousness.
That's the biggest
to think in a certain direction.
Just say on that, I think that's the biggest flaw about the science world is they sort of ignore the paranormal and the supernatural, what's all around us. This is happening a lot, and there's a lot of reports of this.
That's right.
But sorry, carry on with
that's what my thinking is that they're bioetheric life forms, and there's no way of controlling their appearance or sudden disappearance because they're literally appearing perhaps where there's a vortices, a dimensional portal or gateway where two geomagnetic ley lines intersect.
Yeah.
And they literally are appearing from the astral plane. They may even be appearing from a parallel dimension or a parallel reality or even a parallel universe. There's no way of knowing. Again, that's just sheer speculation. But it's very bizarre because the alien big cats, as they're called, you know, the ABCs, these are seen in hundreds of locations across the United Kingdom of Great Britain. They were seen; they've been seen through the 1970s, the 1980s.
Yeah.
You see all these reports in newspapers like the Independent, the Telegraph, the Observer, the Guardian, the Daily Mail, the Daily Express. All these people, mainly a lot of farmers or people living in very remote villages on the outskirts of towns, in counties like Surrey or even Cornwall and many other locations.
Scotland is riddled with supernatural activity. Although people might just see lochs and all this, obviously the most common one's Loch Ness. But you had the questing beast there. That was one of them, and there was one. It was known to come out of the water. It was actually act as a horse, and then it would drag people into the water. Sorry, the kelpie. Yes,
that's right. And this is a type of etheric water horse.
Yes.
So it looks like a horse.
Yeah.
But actually will come out of the water and from the Scottish folklore, stories that were told, it would literally grab the observer, male or female, and many of the actual Scottish clans, both the Lowlander clans and the Highlander clans, would always report some of their family relations would go missing just by going out to these various lochs in the Scottish Highlands or the Scottish Lowlands and places like the Grampians, which is all coniferous pine forests and Norwegian spruce. You see that there's so much bizarre activity going on, and they put up infrared night cameras. They've had security officers there. So many things have been filmed and photographed that cannot be explained, and the laws of physics simply are not able to brush aside and say, "Oh, that's a fake photograph. This could not have happened." It's overwhelming. The evidence is so credible. And this is what we see with the Loch Ness Monster. There's another example. You know, going back, the kelpie, you know, is a waterborne life form, a type of etheric water horse. The Loch Ness Monster, many people have posited the idea, could it actually be a plesiosaur?
Yeah.
You know, which is a type of aquatic dinosaur. Or is it some kind of lake serpent of some nature that gains access? Because Loch Ness is incredibly deep.
It is.
It's believed when they've actually scanned through the Loch Ness, there's believed to be very deep cavities where there's literally subterranean aquatic passageways that maybe actually connect with the other lochs in the Scottish Highlands.
Heat-filled waters, so it's just completely murky.
You can't see nothing can be seen. So who knows what's down there?
Very surreal.
Yeah.
What do you think the Loch Ness Monster is?
Again, I think it's possibly an etheric life form, or it's a physical and biological, tangible life form that's really there. But there is perhaps huge subterranean cavernous openings and subterranean waterways or rivers that somehow it's able to access Loch Ness from those underground areas, perhaps even leading into the hollow earth, but periodically will then come back, probably maybe trying to look for fish. It's part of its eating habits to come back into Loch Ness, feed for a while, and then re-enter these subterranean aquatic passageways and go back into the hollow earth. Or some part of what we may call the Middle Earth, between the surface of planet Earth and the hollow Earth itself, where there's huge cavernous geological openings.
Well,
again,
I found
it's just speculation.
No, it was speculation, but there is, whatever we believe about mainstream and what's going on in there. I mean, in the 80s, Margaret Thatcher actually did a whole investigation into that area, put a huge amount of money to actually search for the Loch Ness.
Yes.
And obviously you had other stories like Aleister Crowley, who brought the house next to Loch Ness.
Yeah.
So you think it was a dinosaur? Do you think the Loch Ness was possibly a dinosaur?
Yeah,
what do you think of that?
I do indeed. And I think if you go back to the Dark Ages or the early medieval period, there was numerous sightings that people couldn't really understand. People thought it was some type of water dragon.
Yeah.
But definitely, I think there is a life form we can call the Loch Ness Monster. I think it's really there.
Yeah.
But it's there periodically because it's going back into subterranean aquatic openings in the hollow earth, and then it's coming back when it wants to for feeding reasons.
They have found underneath the loch, there is actually a very deep tunnel that goes right out to the Atlantic.
Now, that could
and that goes I think it's 7 miles deep, the loch or something like that.
And who knows what's down there, but we also know it's not just the Loch Ness Monster, or many of the other lochs, there has been sightings of water serpents or water dragons.
Yes.
That could be plesiosaurs, which are aquatic dinosaurs, by local residents in the villages in those areas, which is very interesting.
Yeah, I'm never sure what to make of all the photographs we see of Loch Ness, and it's a very blurred kind of subject because obviously there's just no way you can actually really find the truth there unless you probably go and sit in Scotland and camp up on a hillside and sit there for months on end to actually view and examine. If anybody's got time for that, please do, and please send me some research.
That's right.
But you can also see all that information in the book. Now, I was shocked at this, that there has been Sasquatch sightings in UK.
That's right.
One of which was in Cardiff.
That's right.
And this was, and in Tunbridge Wells as well. So, what do you think? What do you think these are? Do you think these are obviously bioetheric beings? I agree with that. I think they are on another frequency. Do you think these are the same type of Sasquatch that are seen in the USA?
Yes, I do. And not only are they being seen, in those locations you've mentioned, that Sasquatch has been sighted in Rendlesham Forest, between what was known as RAF Bentwaters and RAF Woodbridge.
Yep.
And we don't need to explain much about the UFO incident that took place. That's very famous, the Rendlesham Forest incident.
Yep.
That occurred between the 25th to the 27th of December 1980 in that part of Suffolk in East Anglia. So we know that there's a lot of geomagnetic ley lines there that intersect through Rendlesham Forest, just as there are in parts of Tunbridge Wells.
Yeah.
And just as there are many other areas across the United Kingdom of Great Britain where these hairy bipedal hominids appear. And so we know that...
Well, the other place was in 2012. It was actually reported in all the mainstream papers, which of course creates suspicion on whether the truth of that was, but the one with Bigfoot in Tunbridge Wells.
That's right. And that this is what we have to remember is that many of the individuals, many of whom actually are anthropologists in the United States of America and in Canada, who have attempted to communicate with Sasquatch or the Bigfoot, have actually ascertained from rudimentary communication, both in a written form and what appears to be telepathic communication of some nature, that they are super psychic and they're able to, at will, materialize and then literally shift their frequency, literally the molecular structures of their bodies, and literally vanish, be out of space-time, and they're able to transport themselves along the geomagnetic ley lines, slow their vibrations down and recondense and slow their vibration rate of their molecular structures and appear hundreds of miles away in other vast forested or wooded areas, sometimes on the North American continent, perhaps in parts of Western Europe, and obviously in the United Kingdom of Great Britain, where there are huge amounts of, like the New Forest in Hampshire, for example,
of course,
and so many other parts of this
there
country.
is so much woodland in the UK, and it's very possible what is hiding or things tucked away.
That's right.
I always saw the phantom cats as when they were let loose. I remember when I was a child. I remember when we were kids.
Yeah.
There was phantom cats around, and there was a lot of stories around. I remember the local surgery down to us. There was a big story of a phantom cat around the back of that. All over the country. So it seems that it was like a lot of.
Yeah.
What do you think? Somebody just let them out in one place all at the same time, or there was this kind of because there's a huge influx of all this in the 80s.
Yeah, the idea that there's all these people in the United Kingdom purchasing exotic large cats and then letting them free, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's very difficult to bring such exotic animals, and many of which actually are kept in zoos.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, you wouldn't say like London Zoo at Regent's Park, that somebody could take a huge cat like a leopard or a tiger or something, or a mountain lion or a cougar, and suddenly be able to just take it and try and domesticate it and then say, well, let it go wild.
It doesn't make sense.
Even if that was the case, they would still be, because they're those giant cats, those enormous cats actually, for want of a better phrase, are so
size of donkeys. That's what.
They're expert at hunting, so they're not going to be malnourished. They would still be consistently sighted for years and years on end. And even if a farmer had obviously shot at one to try and injure it or to shoo it away, again there would be reports to say Cornwall Police or to Kent Police or whoever. And this probably would be in the national press. It would be in the tabloid press in the United Kingdom. Again, we haven't seen a lot of documented evidence of any of that. They simply vanish into nothing.
No, of course.
That doesn't make a lot of. Then there's nothing for many years. Then there's a spate of these incidents again, numerous sightings in specific geographic areas, and I think it's where these geomagnetic ley lines are intersecting.
And that seems to be the case also, what we talked about in the section in the book about the crossover of ferry paths and all this.
That's right.
The island and all the Irish culture.
Absolutely.
And how they saw, they'd build things and it was seen as bad luck, a bad omen to build these things. And you can see even in London, there's so many geomagnetics in London that there seems that, sometimes buildings are built in the wrong place. I believe, this is something that companies, businesses should all consider when they're building on areas and land energy. They need to understand what's been there before. There's some seriously crazy places in London like that, completely inverted, but some beautiful places as well, a lot of beautiful places. But there's also some very weird energy. And I think this some of these areas, especially as much as it's just plain countryside, there is a convergence of something on a much deeper level going on.
Well, that really interrelates to places like Silbury Hill.
Yes.
In Wiltshire.
Yeah.
It interrelates to places like the Avebury Stone Circle in Wiltshire. It interrelates to places like the Rollright Stones in Oxfordshire.
Yeah.
And so on and so on. The Menatole in Cornwall.
Yeah.
So all these areas where you have these sort of menhirs or megalithic stones.
Yeah.
They were all built in areas where geomagnetic ley lines were intersecting.
Yeah.
And, so there is a connection where in the past, the Irish Druids and the British Druids tried to steer and literally regulate and control the frequencies and vibrations of these geomagnetic ley lines.
Yeah.
And so these alien big cats, or ABCs for want of a better phrase, that are entering our 3D holographic reality that we can call the material dimension, are only going to enter for brief periods, same as the Sasquatch or the Bigfoot.
Yes.
So, what we believe is this 3D holographic reality is really in some ways quite illusory. It's quite phantom-like. It's down to Western science that spend a lot of time deconstructing world folklore and basically dismissing it. Yeah. Dismissing the idea of the concepts of cryptozoology, and therefore anything to do with British cryptids is seen as just a bit of fun. It's a bit of a conspiracy theory. It's not real scientific understanding. It's not
woo-woo,
just move on, folks. Nothing to see here. And it's the same old routine all the time.
Yeah,
but it's all this peripheral activity. So whether it's the unidentified flying objects, whether it's astral spirits, whether it's anything you can think of that's supernatural, paranormal in nature, it's always sidelined as irrelevant, a bit weird, bit strange, bit of a laugh, nothing special. When actually the truth is It's those frequencies and vibrations within the astral plane, around us, that interact all the time through these geomagnetic ley lines, the morphogenic grid around planet Earth, that actually have a very big influence, and so actually can affect human behaviour as well.
I agree totally. And you can look into all these subjects on ley lines on the channel, and that is very true. Ley lines affect our energies and where things are placed on that ley line. If you look at where ley lines are now and what was on them previously, you will see that there has been some very bad inversions created. So some very beautiful places were then inverted into some very negative, destructive places.
Like you just mentioned about London and the demolition of so many.
It's very sad.
So much of the Regency architecture-based buildings here, and then then the neo-brutalist architecture that's brought in, these giant high-rise luxury residential blocks of flats or apartments. And it's like that, a lot of this is built on intersecting geomagnetic ley lines. It creates a lot of vibrational disruption.
Yes. And it all has its place. I mean, the Barbican, for example, brutalist architecture, and it is a beautiful place. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, but it still kind of feels destructive to knocking down these ornate buildings and then replacing them with very plastic-like structures. But Stephen, thank you again.
That's all right.
It's been amazing. Thank you so much. And please, if anybody wants to purchase our book, Mysterious Realities, it's available in paperback and ebook on Amazon, and the links are below. You can also purchase through my website. And it's a bye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.